How's it going, everyone? It is me, Lone, and we are back with another Fallout 76 video. I'm trying to pump them out daily. It's getting tough. They might slow down soon, but I hope you enjoy this one. So when the Fallout 76 trailer dropped, there was something in that trailer that I, and I think others as well, had a double take at because it looked like something that we are all familiar with in the form of the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, or the GECK. Now, I certainly don't want to drag you along for this entire video just for me to say at the end that no, I don't think it was a GECK. So I'm going to say that now. The thing that I'm talking about in the Fallout 76 trailer, in my opinion, I do not think it's a GECK, but I still think it makes for really interesting discussions. What if Fallout 76 does have a GECK and it forms a fundamental component of the entirety of the game? Let's discuss that. But first, of course, I'd like to give you background into the thing that I'm talking about. So a lot of the information that I'm referring to is in the Fallout wiki, which is linked in the description below. But let's get into the background of the GECK, or the Garden of Eden Creation Kit. The Arroyo Elder from Fallout 2 mentions that the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, or GECK, can bring life to the wasteland. Fallout 3 contains a nice quote that summarizes the purpose of the GECK. The GECK will collapse all matter within its given radius and recombine it to form a living, breathing, fertile virgin landscape and allow life to begin anew. Vault-Tec Corporation, via its subdivision FutureTech, developed the advanced technology known as the GECK. It is a terraforming device that is capable of bringing life back to a post-apocalyptic land that was plagued by nuclear war. Although the actual design and completion of the device was conducted by Dr. Stanislaus Braun, the same man that was the overseer of Vault 112, which had trapped its inhabitants in cryogenic pods and had them hooked into virtual reality programs. As crazy as Braun was, he was undoubtedly a genius, and the GECK device he created was truly a marvel. The design of the GECK is quite complex. It is housed with a cold fusion power generator and a replicator, which when combined with the inbuilt fertilizer system containing seeds, chemicals, soil supplements, and of course fertilizer, was capable of revitalizing ground and lands once again. This would presumably allow users to transform dead, infertile, and irradiated ground to ground that was very much fertile, that would enable grass, crops, trees, and other plant life to regrow, and would also sustain farming efforts, thereby underpinning the formations of new towns, settlements, and cities. If you also remember, in Fallout 3, the GECK was used by the Lone Wanderer and his or her father, James, to complete the Project Purity project and purify the water contained within the tidal basin. This was because the GECKs were intended for use beyond mere terraforming and fertilization. The devices were actually meant to be disassembled to help societies thrive. For instance, the cold fusion power generator could become the main source of power for a city or town. And similarly, in Fallout 3, components of the device were helped use to complete the water purification system. Even more interestingly, excerpts from the Fallout Bible enlighten us as to some fascinating uses of the GECK. Now, there are some questions as to whether the Fallout Bible written by Chris Avellone is canon or not, and it's likely not canon, but at the very least we can read these paragraphs to learn of perhaps the potential of a GECK in a game like Fallout 76. The Fallout Bible stated the following: the GECK also contains some basic force field schematics as well as info on how to make adobe type buildings from the landscape, or contain chemicals that can create sand crate walls. As for clothing, the GECK contained codes that allowed the Vault to create more varieties of jumpsuits and weatherproof gear from their dispensers, which they could do anyway before the GECK. It's possible the GECK contained other codes that could unlock more functionality within the Vault computers that weren't initially available because they would jeopardize the survival of the Vaults if they were used or scavenged, or else they would interfere with the grand experiment. Also, the GECKs tell the Vault's inhabitants how to disassemble sections of their Vaults or take extraneous systems from the Vault to create new homes and defensive structures on the surface. And just as a fun image, on the screen right now is an advertisement for the GECK that is found at the end of the Fallout manual, and it contains a lot of general information about the GECK and what it can do. So as part of the Project Safehouse initiative, Vault-Tec issued 2 GECKs to most Vaults, although there were some Vaults that didn't receive any GECKs, predominantly because of the experimentations that were taking place on the Vaults, and the GECKs would actually undermine those experiments and the results. For instance, Vault 101 in Fallout 3 was never meant to have a GECK because the actual experiment of the Vault was prolonged isolation under the Overseer. And then you had Vault 111 in Fallout 4, which also was not given a GECK because, as you noticed, all of the inhabitants were frozen straight away. So there was no need for a GECK to be issued for the inhabitants to use once they had exited the Vault. It was the entire purpose of the GECKs to be given to the inhabitants of the Vault, so once they left, they could use it to create new societies and new towns and cities. And at this stage, we don't actually know whether Vault 76 and Fallout 76 was ever given a GECK. On one side, perhaps we can assume that Vault 76 was never given a GECK because the terminal in the Citadel in Fallout 3 states that the Vault was never given any non-standard equipment. So if we consider one of the pieces of non-standard equipment to be a GECK, then yes, perhaps this Citadel actually confirms that Vault 76 was never given a GECK. However, was the GECK really a piece of non-standard equipment? Because, as was mentioned in the Fallout Wiki, they were actually given to most vaults. It was only really the vaults that had experimentations that never received the GECKs in the first place. So on the other hand, I'd actually argue that the GECKs were actually standard equipment rather than non-standard equipment, and therefore they wouldn't need to be mentioned in that terminal in the Citadel. So I do think it's possible for Vault 76 to have a GECK of some sort, perhaps one or perhaps two, to underpin the entire premise of the game. Now, as I mentioned before, at one point in the Fallout 76 trailer, you can see a table there with a terminal that states on the screen, "You are invited." To the right of that terminal, you can see a device which somewhat resembles a Garden of Eden creation kit. And I actually made this mistake initially. In all likelihood, what it actually is a military-grade circuit board, like the ones that can be found in Fallout 4 and broken down into components to be used for crafting. But even though this particular item on the screen is probably not a GECK, again, I still think it's very possible for Vault 76 to have a GECK, because if the entire purpose of this vault, and indeed the entire game of Fallout 76, is to have a reclamation day and have the citizens of the vault emerge after 20 years after the Great War to kind of rebuild society and take back what is theirs, wouldn't it be understandable for them to have a GECK in their possession? Because, as we mentioned several times, Vault 76 is a control vault. It had no experimentation, so there was no need not to actually issue a GECK or two GECKs to Vault 76. So because of that, and this theme of Reclamation Day, and the potential for this game to be co-op or multiplayer or something, and allow you to play with friends, and because of the entire settlement building mechanic in Fallout 4 that's likely to be ported over to Fallout 76, I think the GECK could be used as a fundamental component of the game to actually justify the Vault residents going outside and being able to rebuild once again, noting that the war was just 20 years prior, so the lands are completely ruined, probably still irradiated. There's no way that grass has had a chance to grow back. There's no way that those grounds are going to be able to sustain farm life or crops or anything like that. So a GECK would actually be necessary for this Reclamation Day to come to fruition. But anyways, Waysanders, I would love to get your thoughts on this topic. Please let me know in the comments below. What do you think of my theory? Am I wrong? Am I stupid? Tell me that. And until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.